Yes. Good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon, Colonel Anurag. And I welcome you all to this 46th lecture in the series of disaster management challenges in CBRN emergencies. The title of today's lecture is Disaster Management Organizations. Myself, Rishikesh Mishra, former Distinguished Scientist, Associate Director in BRC, and Rajaramanna Fellow, now with BRC DAE. So, today's topic, Disaster Management Organization, is in continuation with our earlier discussions on the same series. And some of the things I will be repeating, of course, just to recapitulate the subject. So outlines for the presentations are the concept and evolution of disaster management in India, Disaster Management Act 2005, few highlights of National Disaster Management Plan 2019, then the DM organization at national, state and district levels, disaster management finances. The concept and evolution of disaster management in India. So, as you have already come to know, that Government of India, while recognizing the importance of disaster management as a national policy, had set up a high-powered committee in August 1999 and a national committee after the Gujarat earthquake to make recommendations on the preparation of DM plans and to suggest effective mitigation mechanisms. In fact, post earthquake of Kutch, it was the Gujarat state where the first Disaster Management Act was implemented. So high power committees and the various other forums recommended preparation of disaster management plans for effective mitigation mechanisms. And as you are aware, there was a tsunami in 2004. So after that, government took a defining step, a major step in the legislative history of the country by passing an act from Parliament for creating the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA. That happened in December 2005. So on December 23rd in 2005, the Government of India enacted the Disaster Management Act, which envisaged creation of National Disaster Management Authority to spearhead and implement a holistic and integrated approach to disaster management in India. The NDMA was constituted actually on 30th May 2005 by an executive order of the Government of India. Subsequently, the Act was discussed in Rajya Sabha and cleared in November 2005. Subsequently, in Lok Sabha in December 2005, 1/12th. And finally, His Excellency President of India gave his consent and enacted the Disaster Management Act 2005 on 23rd December 2005. So, and subsequently, the authority was notified on 27 September 2006 under the provisions of the Act for Integration, Coordination of Disaster Management, and establishment of a disaster management fund and the related matters. The DM Act 2005 has 11 chapters and 79 sections. And as mentioned, the Act calls for establishment of NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, which is headed by Prime Minister of India as its chairperson. So NDMA, once again, these are repetitions, just to make the things more clear, that in 38th May 2005, through an executive order, the NDMA was first formed. Then finally, under Section 3 of 1 of the DM Act, which was passed on 23rd December 2005, it was notified finally on 27th September 2006. So NDMA, as we have seen, is the apex body for disaster management of India, in India, and is headed by PM, Prime Minister of India. And it is created with the institutional mechanism at the state and district levels also, which are very clearly mandated in the DM Act 2005. The Act mentions that NDMA may have not more than 9 members, including a vice chairperson. Vice chairperson is one of the members, of course, the senior-most members. The tenure of the members of the NDMA shall be 5 years. As per Section 6 of the Act, NDMA is responsible for laying down the policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management and to ensure timely and effective response to disasters. These guidelines are to be followed by state authorities in drawing up the state plans. So the policies are first created, laid down by the NDMA, and on these guidelines and policies matters, the state authorities are required to make their own disaster management plan specific to the state. So state disaster management authorities is headed by chief ministers of the respective state to implement a holistic and integrated approach to disaster management of the respective state of India. Further down, the responsibility lies with DDMA, that is District Disaster Management Authority, and district magistrate at this district level will be responsible for its implementation. The vision and functions of NDMA. So NDMA vision is to build a safer and disaster resilient India by a holistic, proactive, technology driven and sustainable development strategy that involves all stakeholders and fosters a culture of prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. The functions and responsibilities of NDMA. The NDMA, as the apex body, is mandated to lay down the policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management to ensure timely and effective response to disasters. Towards this, it has the following responsibilities: to to lay down the policies on DM, approve the national plan, approve plans prepared by ministries or department of the government of India in accordance with the national plan. So I think this is very clear that first the policies are made by NDMA. NDMA makes the national plan, and subsequently on the guidelines of the national plan, the ministries and various departments of government of India are required to make their own national plan, for their specific ministry or the department, which is again put up to NDMA for approval. Then lay down guidelines to be followed by the state authorities in drawing up the state plan. So that is also, I think, very clear that guidelines are developed by NDMA, which are provided to the state authorities, and the state authorities, they make their own state plans for disaster management. This is the photo of the NDMA building, which is located in New Delhi. And on the right hand side, we have the logo of NDMA. The NDMA logo reflects the aspirations of this national vision of empowering all stakeholders to improve the effectiveness of disaster management in India. You see the human figures all around the logo in golden color at the top. And you find them all joining their hands together one by one. That means it conveys the sense that this is a teamwork. It is a responsibility of one and all for the effective and meaningful management of disasters. And the map of India is embossed in golden color in the center. The organization of NDMA. So NDMA Secretariat comprises of 5 divisions, namely the very first division is responsible for making policies, plans, the procedures for rehabilitations and recovery, awareness generation, capacity building, and the training division. The second division under NDMA is mitigation division. Third is operations and communication divisions. Fourth, administration and coordination division. And fifth is finance and accounts division. So NDMA organization is something like this. As we have seen, its chairman is none other than the Prime Minister of India himself. And then we have a vice chairman, who is also called member secretary of the NDMA. Then NDMA members, what is shown in the bracket is 4 members, but we have seen the Act provides that it can have maximum 9 members, including the member secretary, vice chairman. And the members are having the responsibility for heading 1 or 2 divisions under NDMA. Say like one mitigation division, operation divisions, policy and plans division. We have seen that in the previous slide. Then there can be a common member, since members are 4, so one can be common for administration and finance. The slide also shows NDRF and NIDM. So NDMA is required to provide the policies and guidelines for NDRF and NIDM. NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, and National Institute of Disaster Management and NIDM. So policies and guidelines are provided by NDMA for furthering their work in the respective field. So role of NDMA, once again, we will discuss here. The NDMA makes the guidelines which are to be followed by different ministries or department of the Government of India for the purpose of integrating the measures for prevention of disaster or the mitigation of its effects in development plans and projects, coordinate the enforcement and implementation of the policy and plans for disaster management, to recommend provisions of funds for the purpose of mitigation, to provide such support to other countries affected by major disasters as may be determined by the central government, to take such other measures for prevention of disasters or the mitigation or preparedness and capacity building for dealing with threatening disaster situations or disasters as it may consider necessary. To lay down broad policies and guidelines for functioning of the National Institute of Disaster Management. We have seen in the previous slide that basically NDMA makes the policies and guidelines, and accordingly the NIDM carries out their responsibilities, functions as per the guidelines. Now we'll see the National Disaster Management Plan 2019. Actually, the very first National Disaster Management Plan was launched by our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji in 2016. And this plan was further elaborated, more detailed in 2019. And the plan is developed on the 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are like Disaster Management Act 2005, the National Policy on Disaster Management 2009, that was the first policy made in 2009, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Sustained Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals SDG, and the Convention of Paris Recommendations COP21, the Prime Minister's 10-point for disaster risk reductions, the social inclusion DRR and integral feature. We'll see this more in details little later. So the plan addresses mitigation, risk reduction, preparedness, capacity development, and response aspects of several disasters. It covers several types of disasters like cyclones, floods, means natural disasters, as well as the man-made disasters like cyclones, floods, urban floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides, snow avalanches, heat waves, drought, cold wave, thunderstorms, lightning, fires and forest fires, cloudburst, and hailstorms, glacier, lake, outburst, floods, chemical disasters, biological, nuclear, and radiological emergencies. Then 33 disaster management guidelines have been prepared by DMA and are available in website for implementation. So what is recommended as per these major guidelines? The social inclusion as a ubiquitous and cross-cutting principles, and two mainstreaming the DRR as an integral feature. These five pillars, they may be both overlapping and non-overlapping themes, as well as some other nuanced differences in emphasis. When we talk about the social inclusion, so what the disaster management plan actually envisages that your disaster risk reduction and disaster response both should be actually socially inclusive. What is meant that though disasters are not person discriminatory, but disaster responses and disaster impacts are not gender neutral. I think this is very, very clear. But we find that normally in case of disaster, unfortunately, that is unfortunate part that the weak section of our population, it could be gender minority or SC/ST people, it could be children, elderly people, or the persons with disabilities. They are the worst affected people. While the disasters are non-discriminatory, they do not discriminate between these type of people, different types of people. But unfortunately, disaster responses and disaster impact are not really gender neutral, are not always uniformly same for all the affected people. We find that children, elderly people, they and even the women, then physically weak people, they suffer most. They get neglected. They are often left on their own. And in fact, particularly you will find that the women and then the children, they are subject to various kind of abuses that could be mental, physical, sexual, and so on. So disaster management plan aims that your plan should be socially inclusive. It should be in such a way that everybody is treated equally. Everybody is given the best kind of rescue and the relief without any discriminations. As the Declaration of Human Rights states that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. That is very true. They may not be equal physically or economically, but they are born free and equal in dignity and rights. All have equal rights. All have the same kind of dignity, or should have the same kind of dignity. And that is the spirit of brotherhood. Declaration of Human Rights is in detail. I'm just giving a little brief of this. So capacity development, this is also important. Capacity development is our NIDM is largely responsible for capacity development. And of course, the NDRF and the local bodies can also play a very big role in the capacity development. So what is important that they themselves play a vital role in capacity development, and capacities are developed at the various levels. For NDRF, local bodies that could be rural and urban and community training. The various types of NGOs, then corporations, municipal corporations, panchayat people, the, the leaders and the villages or in the towns, and particularly the civil defense systems, all the people who are connected with this kind of activities, the NGOs, they all are given proper community training to deal with the disaster relief system, disaster risk reductions, and TRR measures. What is the vision of our National Disaster Management Plan? Let us see that. So the vision incorporates the goals reflected in national policies, laws, and the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda for DRR, as well as international best practices, frameworks, and discourses. What is the vision? To make India disaster resilient across all sectors, achieve substantial and inclusive disaster risk reduction by building local capacity, starting with the poor and decreasing significantly the loss of lives, livelihoods, and assets in different forms, including economic, physical, social, cultural, and environmental, while enhancing the ability to cope with the disasters at all levels. So that is the vision while developing the National Disaster Management Plan of 2019, and we are required to work on these lines to implement the plan substantially to the best possible capacities. The capacity development, there is a definition given by United Nations on disaster risk reduction. The capacity development is the process by which people, organizations, and society systematically stimulate and develop their capacities over time to achieve social and economic goals. It is a concept that extends the term of capacity building to encompass all aspects of creating and sustaining capacity growth over time. It involves learning and various types of training, but also continuous efforts to develop institutions, political awareness, financial resources, technology systems, and the wider enabling environment. That is the capacity development. It is a process in which the people, organization, and society, they all develop their capacities. Next is finances for disaster management. So, in fact, when the Disaster Management Act was notified in 2006, the Disaster Management Fund, provision for the Disaster Management Fund were also made in the Act. And for that purpose, National Disaster Response Fund is created. And this fund is actually for providing the immediate relief. This fund is not really for the developing the preparedness or the prevention or mitigation of the disasters, but it is used basically to provide the immediate relief and rescue if a disaster strikes. And then question comes, where from this fund is finally receiving the money? So actually it is the contingency funds. The contingency funds is the fund which is held with the Secretary of the Finance Ministry on behalf of President of India. This should be noted. This fund is actually held by Secretary or by the government on behalf of President of India, and the government can use this fund in case of any national calamities without immediately seeking the approval of Parliament. In case of any national calamities, the government can straight away use these funds available in the contingency for giving the relief and rescue operations to the affected people. Affected, it could be the state, town, or whatever it is. There are three types of funds government is holding, that is contingency fund, consolidated funds of India, and the public account. And as and when this fund is used, then it is further, replenished from the consolidated funds of India. And on the similar line, the state disaster response funds are created by the state. And I think by now we all know that finally the states are responsible for managing the disasters in their respective state. So this is the state disaster response fund. These are the funds which are actually to be used in case of disaster for not only giving the immediate relief and rescue and rehabilitation, but also for developing the mechanism for prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. The Disaster Management Act has also made recommendations for creation of national disaster mitigation funds. But that is still a recommendation. It is not implemented yet. So what we have, the National Disaster Response Fund, and just some recommendations for national disaster mitigation funds. Of course, there are statutory provisions in the Act by which the ministries and departments are required to make provisions for funds. What does it mean? That in case of any event, accident, or the emergency in their respective ministry or in their respective department, the concerned ministry or department should be able to provide the fund for the concerned rescue and relief operations. So they should make provisions in their budget for handling any emergencies for disaster management. Then the disaster management organizations at the national, state, and district level. We are already discussing at the national level. Let us see what else we have at the national level and the state level or district level. So NDMA is mandated to deal with the all types of disasters, natural or man-made. Whereas such other emergencies include those requiring close involvement of security forces and or intelligence agencies such as terrorism, counterinsurgency, law and order situations, serial bomb blast, hijacking, air accidents, severe and weapon systems, disasters, port and harbor emergencies, forest fires, oil field fires, oil spills. This will continue to be handled by the extant mechanism. What does it mean? National Crisis Management Committee, NCMC. It will be handling these specific types of emergencies. So all natural or man-made disasters, while they are managed, though they are managed at the state level, but provisions or the policies are made by NDMA. However, for these special types of disasters or emergencies, like CBRN, we are discussing CBRN. So CBRN, these are actually managed by the National Crisis Management Committee. National Crisis Management Committee. So this slightly higher level committee, we will see the hierarchy very soon. So they are actually reviewed, policies are made in this committee for this type of disasters. So central government will also facilitate coordination with the UN agencies, international organizations, and governments of foreign countries in the field of disaster management. The Ministry of External Affairs, in coordination with MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, will facilitate external coordination and cooperation. Means if there is a disaster in the other country, then also our government may play a very proactive role. It has played, in fact, at various times. We have all seen that. So it is always with the coordination of Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Home Affairs. And similarly, in case of any disaster in our country, government may seek help from the other nations also, if it is really needed to be so. That will also be by the same mechanism, by the same coordination from Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Home Affairs. So NIDM and NDRF. So NIDM is in partnership with other research institutions, basically for capacity development as one of its major responsibilities. Capacity development, as we have seen earlier also, is stated to be the major responsibility of NIDM. So NIDM, in partnership with other research institutions, has capacity development as one of its major responsibilities, along with training, research, documentation, and development of a national level information base. It will network with other knowledge-based institutions and function within the broad policies and guidelines laid down by NDM. It will organize training of trainers, DM officials, and other stakeholders. NIDM will strive to emerge as a center of excellence in the field of disaster management. So you can see that NIDM can do so in partnership with other research institutions. So as in HBNI, we are running this code. So NIDM, if it feels necessary, it can have a partnership for other research institutions, also like HBNI also, for any specific research to be carried out in field of the CBRN accident and so on. It is mandated to do so. And for the purpose of a specialized response to a threatening disaster situation or disaster or emergencies, both natural and man-made, such as those of CBRN origin, the Act has mandated the constitution of National Disaster Response Force. We are quite aware of this, and in fact, we have also seen how the NDRF carries out its mandate, its responsibility in case of any emergencies. We have seen that during the demonstrations of radiological or the chemical emergencies. The National Executive Committee. We have seen the NDMA and NCMC, and now we have NEC. The Act under Section 8 enjoins the central government to constitute a National Executive Committee to assess the national authorities. But what I did not mention that NCMC is actually headed by the Cabinet Secretary. And the NEC is headed by Home Secretary. Home Secretary is the chairperson of NEC. So NEC is composed of secretary level officers of the ministries of Home, Agriculture, Atomic Energy, Defense, Drinking Water Supply, Environment, and Forest, Finance, Health, Power, Rural Development, Science and Technology, Space and Telecommunication, Urban Development, and Water Resources. And the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff is an ex officio member of the NEC. The NEC, under section of the Act, is responsible for preparation of National Disaster Management Plan for the whole country and to ensure that it is reviewed and updated annually. So what we are seeing as the National Disaster Management Plan of 2019, it has been prepared under the auspices of NEC, National Executive Committee. So let us see the hierarchy. The NDMA is headed by Prime Minister. We have NCMC, which is headed by Cabinet Secretary. Cabinet Secretary is the senior most officer in the administrative hierarchy. We all know that perhaps. And so actually it is under Prime Minister, the NCMC, not really under NDMA. NCMC is independent body. NDMA is headed by Prime Minister, but NCMC is headed by Cabinet Secretary under Prime Minister. Then we have NEC, that is National Executive Committee, which is headed by Secretary of MHA, Home Secretary. And under that we have NDMA and NDRF both under Ministry of Home Affairs. And you see that NCMC interacts with NEC, it interacts with various ministries and department committees like CMG, DAE, NPCL, and ARB, specifically for radiological and nuclear emergencies. Likewise, it will interact, it will have dialogues and the exchange of information with the respective ministry in case of any chemical or biological hazards. I think once again we can see that chemical emergencies, as you know, these are handled by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, and the biological hazards are handled by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So NCMC will deal with those ministries and the respective departments for prevention of any disasters. And of course, it can interact with NDMA and NDRF also through NEC. So we'll complete in 5 minutes. So likewise, at the state level, we have SDMA, and the district level, we have DDMA. So NEC interacts with SDMA also, and NDMA also, and NDMA and NDRF, of course, they are in touch with state disaster management authorities, and the state disaster management authorities are in touch with DDMA and concerned ministries, because you know that our plants, nuclear plants, power plants are located at the various states, in the various cities, various towns actually, like Tarapur, Kalpakam in near Chennai, Taiga in Karnataka. So the concerned, state or the district will have direct interaction with the plant authorities for disaster risk reductions. Then we have National Disaster Management Institutional Mechanism. So we have seen that National Crisis Management Committee, NCMC, and Cabinet Committee on Security, CCS. So basically, Cabinet Secretary is the chairperson of the NCMC, and it directly deals with any states or government and the UTs. And NDMA, it interacts with NIDM, NDRF for policy guidelines, and it also interacts with NCMC. The figure represents merely the institutional pathways of coordination, decision-making, and communication for disaster management, and does not imply any chain of command. This point, the note should be, read in a spirit and in total. So it is not chain of command, it is just the pathway for coordination, decision-making, and communication. And it should be read, seen, and understood in that true sense. The state management, disaster management authorities. So all state governments are mandated under Section 14 of the Act to establish SDMA. SDMA is headed by Chief Minister of the state, and it has not more than 8 members. And like National Executive Committee, State Executive Committee is responsible for drawing up state disaster management plan and implementing the national plans. And SDMA is mandated under Section 28 to ensure that all the departments of the state prepare disaster management plans as prescribed by national and state authorities. So it is in principle the same. What NDMA does at the national level, SDMA does at the state level. The corresponding departments of the state government will prepare the necessary plans for disaster management and seek the approval, of course, from the SDMA. Similar picture is there for SDMA, as we have seen for national disaster management. So it is also same state government where the chief minister is heading the state disaster management authorities, and then the state executive committee is there, The relief commissioners or nodal departments are there, state departments, line agencies, and agencies with the disaster management responsibilities. Of course, SDRF is also there. Like NDRF, we have SDRF and State Emergency Operation Centers, SCDCs are there. Likewise, DDMA. And of course, state government and state disaster management interacts with NDMA for basically policy guideline for seeking funds, etc., etc. This ornogram is of DM authorities from center to state level. We have NDMA, then it is again mentioned that is chaired by Prime Minister. Then we have Union Territory Disaster Management Authorities, which are chaired by Lieutenant Governor, and State Disaster Management Authority chaired by Chief Minister, and District Disaster Management Committee headed by District Magistrate, Commissioner, or Collector. And down the line on DDMA, down the line we have for the block or for the local bodies like Panchayat and municipalities will have the similar setup. And the block deals with villages, school, primary health centers, grassroots institutions. So in capacity building, disaster management of the state or the district should take care of training or imparting the knowledge to the various village leaders and the primary health centers and other NGOs. And at the local body of the panchayat or municipalities, it is required to be done same way for wards, village panchayat and villages. With this, I come to the end of the lecture. Thank you for your kind attention. And I look forward for some questions, or you can pass it on later on to the help desk. Thank you.